Hey everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. So this is going to be a little bit strange. So I went up to the firewood hill yesterday and had, intended to haul firewood. But I had finished assembling everything on the old Farmall B the previous weekend or 2 weekends ago. Doesn't matter. I forgot the special thin wall socket, which I guess is still on the truck. That tractor uses the large base spark plug, and it's a 7/8 socket, but it's got to be a real thin wall or it won't clear the casting on the head. So literally, that's all I needed. Okay, so I remember it this time. Get it to start after a lot of screwing around, and it sounded like rancid rat butt. I mean, bad. It was basically, it sounded just as bad as prior to when I tore the cylinder head off of it. And I don't regret any of the stuff that I did because it desperately needed that work. So I'm okay with that. But I'm like, this is a simple engine. This is a simple engine. I know I had it timed right. And I did. I did have it timed right. But on an H4 Magneto, and this is a Magneto, it does not need any battery for ignition at all. I like to have a battery for the cranking motor. I mean, that beats the hell out of hand cranking, you know what I mean? But that battery could be stone cold dead, not even there, and that tractor will start because it has a Magneto. Alright. I had picked up a remanufactured Magneto back in 2019. My dad had been having a lot of trouble with the original Mag, and we had replaced some parts in it, and I just said, you know what? We don't have time for this crap because we were getting ready to move folks over here. I'm just going to order a remanufactured Mag. So that's what has been on that tractor since 2019. This Mag right here, okay, came from a seller on eBay. And he had obviously painted it, but had gone through, dealt with servicing the impulse, I think he had put a new coil in it, points condenser, all that sort of jazz. Of course, this is the same Mag that I accidentally wired battery voltage to an improper terminal right there, trying to get the charge circuits unscrewed. So I melted the coil. Well, I replaced the coil, okay? I didn't do anything to change the internal timing of the Magneto. We're going to come over to the bench, and I've got the old one. My dad saved that, and so I've got a box of tractor parts here. We're going to take this old Mag apart a little bit, and I'm going to show you guys what I found in this one. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to check it out. So obviously, the cap and rotor are off. The rotor alignment right there snaps in. You cannot get that wrong. You will see there are two markings here, R and L, and that stands for left-hand rotation, which would be counterclockwise, and right-hand rotation, which would be clockwise. These mags were used on a ton of different tractors that International had, including the diesels, many of which, those early diesels, you actually started them on unleaded until you got it warm enough that it would run on diesel. And then you'd pull a lever and switch the fuel. It's amazing. I would love to see one of those in person. But anyway, these were designed to be universal so that you could run it on an engine, depending on where it was mounted on the engine, whether it was turning clockwise, counterclockwise, you could make it work, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and open up the right way to get to the points and the condenser, because that's a service item. You don't actually open this. you take these 3 screws here out. So let's do that, and I'll show you what's underneath. Okay, screws are out. This just lifts right off. And there you have it. There's your points. And actually the condenser is retained back over here, and you've got to pull this cover off in order to access the little retainer for it. And if I'm remembering right, it just slides out the front at that point. But that's all that's serviceable under here is basically the points, and that actually is a new set of points. I'm going to remember that. Okay, so obviously there's a timing issue because you've got to keep your rotor in time with the rest of this assembly. Well, that's a D-shaped shaft, so it can't get out of time. There's only one way that it can go back together. Only one. So even if you spin this over 1,000 ways from Sunday, the only way it won't go back together is if you're on camera trying to do it one-handed. Come on, baby. There we go. Okay. So that's the furthest you've got to go into this if you're doing normal service. Again, if you're doing a condenser or the coil, you pop this cover off. 4 screws right there. It's underneath. No big deal. Okay. But in terms of where the impulse right there connects to the engine and the timing to the rotor, you don't service anything else. I'm going to put these screws back in, and I'm going to loosen these 2 and get them out, and I'll show you what I found on the mag that was working properly and then magically wasn't working properly. Okay. There we have it. This is the quote-unquote timing of the Magneto. So your impulse drive back here spins with the engine. There, I'm coming up on an impulse and I don't want to sprain my thumb again. But the driven shaft, or the drive, is this gear right here. This is connected to the impulse, okay? Now there's no in and out play for me to demonstrate that, but that's what it is. So, remember those marks right there? Well, you time this damn thing by lining those marks up where they meet for the engine that you have. The rotation, okay? You've got to clean up the grease on there. And I'm going to go backwards because I don't want, again, to be fighting that. So you can see this tooth right here. It has a piece that almost looks like it's missing. Okay, that is the mark. I'm going to get it back around. Okay. Now, I would say that my dad came in here and played around a little bit because this isn't even right for the Farmall. For a clockwise rotation, you want it to line up. If I'm reading that right, that's the R right there. Okay. So you see this is just a pivot. That's all this is. This is what the rotor rides on, but it's just a pivot. This is the drive. So again, if that's what I would want it, whoops, one off. If that's what I would want it to be, we'll quit bumbling around in here and I'll get right to the point. What I found when I took that one that had been running apart correctly was something about like that. About 7 or 8 teeth off. I don't know how that happens. When it should be like that. And when you seal this thing up, there's nothing to change it. These gears, obviously, if they stripped, you'd know it, right? So how did that happen? How did that mag go from being timed 100% appropriately to being off 7 or 8 teeth on the gear when it was basically sitting there? It was sitting there. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Somebody who's more familiar with these than me, if you have an answer, if you say, no, but if you take apart the impulse and you do this, do that, if you got an answer, a plausible way, I would actually prefer that. I would prefer to be a jackass that just did something wrong with that mag at some point when I was replacing the coil than to be right about my suspicion here. Because again, I don't like being a suspicious person. I don't really care for it at all. So anyway, help me out. What the hell happened here? Okay, I don't know that I've ever had a more frustrating experience than this. This is the stupidest, simplest engine on the face of the planet, and I don't know, I can't make it run. So that's a problem. I want to go through a few things because I'm at the point of I need some help. So quick recap. I've gone through this mag. It produces good spark. We'll see that later. I've changed the timing in it. We know that from the earlier part of this video. At least if I keep all that stuff. I've replaced one. I've had the cylinder head off. Had a valve job done. New valve springs. I've got the old push rods, the old rocker assembly. I've readjusted the valves and checked them numerous times. They're close enough, it should run. Okay. I have gone through the carburetor. Again, stupid simple. All that is an idle mixture adjustment. That's nothing special. Everything else in there is based on position of the throttle, governor, essentially, because that is governed. Okay, I've painted everything that I've taken off. That's it. Can't make it run. It was trying earlier, but it's still just, it should just hit and go. So she's on top dead center, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to get the damn camera to focus up in here to see. Maybe. There's the mark on the back of the plate. And then there's the mark on the bottom of the flywheel. It's a plus, and you can see my red paint mark that I put there when we did a clutch years ago. So she's on top dead center of number 1. Where's my screwdriver? And just in case, I've got number 1 plug out. Okay. It's the top of the piston, right there. You can see the mag is ready to fire on number 1. Number 1 is marked on the cap. Okay, it's lined up. These plug wires are only 4 years old. Those spark plugs are brand new. They are gapped. What am I missing? I don't have a clue what the hell I'm missing here. So let me put the plug back in, snap that back on, and I'll just crank it over. We'll try a little choke. Almost wants to. I don't get it. I've done this a lot of times, and I have tried timing this mag to the engine the way the book says, which is getting it on number 1 and then twisting this until you hear the snap. In no position in the range of adjustment can I get it to start. We always ran it up there. Okay, so that's what I'm up against. And in case anybody has a question about the spark, how can I set this that you guys be able to see it and I'll be able to do it? Right there should. See if my arms are long enough to crank this thing over. Can't even get it in there. I don't know if that's showing up. I'm probably moving too much. Saw that one. Oh, man. Yes, she has good compression. I'm liking it. So I don't think my spark is weak. Like I say, it's got a new condenser, a new coil, a new cap, a new rotor, and this was a rebuilt mag before I burned up that coil by accident. So like I said, what am I missing? Because I am completely fed up with coming up here with new parts and new ideas and having them just go right down the toilet. Sure glad I pulled those loose. I mean, those could fit a little bit tighter, but they're not rattling out. I ripped them loose when I was pulling this. It was the 3 and 4 spark plug wires. When I pulled this out, I pulled them loose. I mean, I could replace the wires again, but I don't think that's what the problem is. So, I'll quit babbling. I need some ideas. Anybody has experience with these? I mean, this drive, because I'm getting my timing marks down at the flywheel to line up, and it's putting the mag exactly where it's supposed to be. The rotor on the mag is where it's supposed to be every single time. I don't see how there's something internal to the engine that I'm not thinking of. Like I say though, I'm at a loss. So, any ideas are very much welcome.